Policing in Australia is often seen as tough but fair, backed by strict laws and a long history of order. But in recent years, controversies have piled up, from protests and racial bias to misconduct and toxic workplace cultures. Today, we're diving into the biggest issues shaping the public's trust in Australian police. In Australia, the right to protest is a cornerstone of our democracy, but it's currently at the center of a fierce national debate. The core question is, where do we draw the line between free expression and public order? This tension was starkly illustrated in Melbourne, where neo-Nazi groups were permitted to rally on the steps of Parliament. The decision to allow such a public display of hate speech under the protection of the law sparked widespread outrage and accusations of a double standard. Contrast this with the situation in Sydney. Organisers of an anti-corruption protest aiming to march across the iconic Harbour Bridge were met with a firm rejection from police. The official reasoning cited significant safety risks and the immense strain on police resources required to manage such a high-impact demonstration. Authorities argued that shutting down a critical piece of city infrastructure posed an unacceptable level of disruption. For civil liberties advocates, these events paint a troubling picture of inconsistency. They argue that while hateful ideologies are given a platform, legitimate political dissent is being suppressed under the guise of public safety. This selective enforcement, they warn, creates a chilling effect, discouraging citizens from exercising their right to free assembly. The debate is further complicated by new, tougher anti-protest laws in several states, which impose severe penalties for disrupting business or infrastructure, leading many to question if the space for public dissent in Australia is shrinking. Another controversy that never goes away, the treatment of Indigenous Australians. A coronial inquiry recently found racism played a role in the police shooting of teenager Kumanjayi Walker. Deaths in custody continue to shake Aboriginal communities, with human rights groups demanding that independent bodies, not police themselves, investigate these cases. For many, it's proof of a system stacked against First Nations people. Then there's misconduct, a pattern that goes beyond a few bad apples and raises serious questions about accountability. In Sydney, 2 officers allegedly stomped on and dragged a mentally ill woman during what was supposed to be a welfare check. The incident, meant to be an act of care, sparked public outrage and highlighted the critical need for specialized mental health training, questioning if armed police are always the right responders for a health crisis. This issue of neglect is tragically amplified when it intersects with race. Another case saw a senior officer found guilty of ignoring an Aboriginal man self-harming in custody. Actions a magistrate linked to unconscious racism. This isn't an isolated tragedy. It echoes the ongoing crisis of Indigenous deaths in custody. Decades after a royal commission provided a roadmap for reform, First Nations people remain disproportionately at risk, suggesting a deep systemic failure. Add to that whistleblower reports of a toxic internal culture. Bullying, sexism, and homophobia inside the force itself create a blue wall of silence that can protect problem officers and discourage ethical cops from speaking out. This fosters an us versus them mentality that erodes public trust, and the picture of policing only gets darker. Police aren't just facing cultural and legal battles. Technology has created new threats, like 3D printed guns. These untraceable weapons are on the rise, and experts warn they could undermine Australia's famously strict gun control laws. Officers are scrambling to keep up, but without national coordination, it's becoming a dangerous game of catch-up. So, where does this complex and often fraught history leave Australian policing today? The picture is undeniably complicated. On one hand, we have dedicated officers confronting genuine dangers daily. They are the first responders to everything from violent armed crime and domestic crises to managing the thousands of protests that shape our public discourse every year. This is a high-stakes, high-stress job, and it's crucial to acknowledge the immense pressure these individuals are under. But on the other hand, this pressure cannot excuse the deep-seated issues we've explored. The shadows of systemic racism, particularly its devastating impact on Indigenous communities, loom large. We've seen how allegations of misconduct, from excessive force to invasive strip searches, are not isolated incidents, but part of a troubling pattern. The expansion of surveillance powers and the heavy-handed policing of protests raise fundamental questions about our civil liberties. Each controversy chips away at the foundation of public trust, creating a chasm between law enforcement and the communities they are sworn to protect. This isn't just a PR problem, it's a crisis of legitimacy. The path forward is fiercely debated. Calls for reform, transparency, and accountability are growing louder, moving from the fringes to the mainstream. These aren't just abstract concepts, they translate into tangible demands. Independent bodies with real teeth to investigate police misconduct, mandatory use of body-worn cameras with publicly accessible footage, and a cultural shift away from a warrior mindset towards a guardian one, rooted in community partnership. This brings us to the fundamental question: are these deep-seated issues merely the growing pains of a modernizing police force, or do they point to a system that is fundamentally broken and in need of a radical overhaul? What does a truly just and effective policing model look like for 21st century Australia? The answers will shape the future of our democracy. Let us know your thoughts and experiences in the comments below, and as always, don't forget to like and subscribe for Diced Mangoes.